As Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II celebrates 70 years on the throne, the royal family is facing calls from Indigenous leaders to issue an apology for the legacy of the residential school system. But according to one survivor, an apology without actions wouldn't have much value. This is part 2 of CHCH News' Platinum Jubilee special on the Queen.
It is a milestone celebration for Canadians. I am not a Canadian. I am a Haudenosaunee.
For residential school survivor Diane Hill, the celebration of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee has no personal meaning.
It has no impact on me.
She suffered traumatizing abuse during her time at the Mohawk Institute and thinks the Queen, as Canada's head of state, should apologize for the legacy of the schools, but says an apology alone wouldn't mean much to her.
The words, because they're requested, mean nothing.
Hill says what would mean something is if the royals helped advance reconciliation through direct actions.
It would be a start to fund the revitalization of our culture and language.
The residential school system aimed to take away the language and culture of Indigenous children and strip them of their identity, something that has led to serious social problems and intergenerational trauma.
Our territory is rampant with alcoholism and drugs. This is the effects of genocide.
Hill says helping Indigenous children discover their cultural identity and speak their own languages will help overcome some of those problems.
That is the strength of our identity. That is embedded in our language. That is what our children need to learn, who they are.
To do that and take a step towards reconciliation, she says the Queen could help secure funding to construct a building for Gowaneo, a Cayuga and Mohawk language immersion school on Six Nations. Since its inception in 1986, the school has never had a building of its own, and the community faced fresh disappointment just last week when Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Mark Miller did not commit to funding the new building while visiting Six Nations.
I can't promise anything today.
Hill met me on the land where she hopes the school will one day be built. It is estimated it will cost about $15 million to build and another $2 million annually to operate.
It's going to strengthen the identity away from the social ills.
Hill isn't the only one who thinks an apology from the Queen and some direct action on reconciliation is appropriate. Just 2 weeks ago, while on a visit here in Canada, Prince Charles faced calls for a royal apology from the Assembly of First Nations and the Métis National Council. Now, Prince Charles didn't directly address the request, but he did say that he was deeply moved by conversations he had with survivors. On that visit, Prince Charles did acknowledge Canada's terrible treatment of Indigenous people. We must find new ways to come to terms with the darker and more difficult aspects of the past, acknowledging, reconciling, and striving to do better. The Queen has also commented on the residential school legacy, issuing a statement in September on National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. I join with all Canadians on this first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation to reflect on the painful history that Indigenous peoples endured in residential schools in Canada, and on the work that remains to heal and to continue to build an inclusive society. McMaster University Royal Historian Justin Vokes says the Queen's role as a constitutional monarch limits her ability to make an apology.
She was able to make that statement, but she's limited in terms of making larger steps than that without the consent of the Prime Minister.
Vokes says the Queen is supposed to stay out of politics, and an apology could be considered political. He says the federal government and the royal family would have to work together for an apology to ever come.
That is what our political system requires. Both sides of the leadership coin have to be in cooperation.
The Queen is also the supreme governor of the Anglican Church in England, and since the Anglican Church ran 36 residential schools, including the Mohawk Institute, some Indigenous leaders say that is another reason why she should issue an apology. Matt Ingram, CHCH News, Hamilton.